What is going on, my fellow nerds? Operator Augur here, and this is going to be build number 2 or chapter 3 in our playlist for season 4, going into the builds that I think are going to be very grand. And this is for all of you avid bone spear enthusiasts. This is a pure bone spear build. Now, what happened with Bombardier is that we're actually using bone spear to generate corpses. Corpse explosion can do the damage. This build is no, I want bone spear to do the damage. So how are we going to get bone spear to do as much damage as possible? And I personally believe that in this build, the best way to do bone spear is still utilizing the bone mages to cast the bone spears every 6 attacks, which means that we're still going to be running off of the same idea, which is, hey, we want to get as fast attack speed as possible so that they're able to rotate through their attacks faster, which are going to cast the bone spears more quickly. Now, one of the things that we need to understand about how minions are working with bone spear is that anything that modifies minion damage isn't going to do anything to bone spear damage. The bone spears that are cast by the minions literally act as if you are the ones casting them. Macro Boy, if you don't know who that is, link will be in the description below. Absolutely amazing content creator, probably one of the best, if not the best, Necromancer content creator, but absolutely check him out. Has made a video talking about how this works in his testing. The bone spears that are cast by the minions are quite literally you casting them. And so anything that can happen in terms of the effect doing damage, the splinterings, everything that happens with you casting a bone spear works, except for anything that costs resource. So we are going to be running Ring of Starless Skies in this build, and Ring of Starless Skies says, hey, when you spend resource, this is what happens. Well, when the bone spears are cast by the mages, they're not casting resource, and therefore that does not synergize with Ring of Starless Skies. So that's one of the things that doesn't. But everything else that, like, hey, it can proc you to flesh, it works with grasping veins, it makes things vulnerable, the splinterings are doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's literally you casting bone spear. So this means that things like Cult Leader, where like, hey, I have more attack speed, this means it's going to affect the minion damage. That minion damage is then going to scale into the bone spear damage. Unfortunately, is not how it's going to work. So we cannot depend on that one working. So don't put your eggs in one basket on that. The minions do not modify the bone spear damage whatsoever. What this allows us to do is we don't need to go hybrid here. We can go full blown bone spear in this build, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's talk about it. Let's get right into it. So the first thing that you're going to notice is we're not running Lidless Wall. So how are we going to upkeep the Bone Storm? Well, first thing is we're going to be running Osseous Scale in this build. So Osseous Scale is going to do two things. Number one, it's literally just going to keep our Bone Storm up longer, but because it consumes things, we can actually run Flesh Eaters. So this is going to be like one of those weird things that we're actually going to do when we're against bosses, where we're actually going to cast our Bone Storm to pick up the corpses and set up that big damage rotation and get that Flesh Eater, and then just go ham for the next 6 seconds and just rip into the boss, because Bone Storm consuming the corpses does actually activate Flesh Eater. So that's going to be like an optimum thing to do. So we're still going to run a Flesh Eater in this build because it can do that, and it's going to be really good for boss rotations. But really, more importantly, it's able to increase our Bone Storm's duration so that now it lasts 22.5 seconds. The next thing that we're going to be doing is that we're going to be running 3 ranks of Rapid Ossification in our ring, and then 3 in our amulet. This is going to give us a total of 9 ranks of Rapid Ossification, which is going to reduce our bone skills by 4.5 seconds every 100 essence we spend. And though we are running Ring of Starless Skies in this build, which does kind of have some anti-synergy with Rapid Ossification, we're going to be casting Bone Spear so much that you can very realistically proc this at least 4 to 5 times within that 22.5 seconds. And if you proc this, let's say 5 times, and it's reducing it by 4.5 seconds each, you have effectively reduced the cooldown of your Bone Storm by 22.5 seconds. That's a lot. We only need to reduce it by another 7.5 seconds based on the cooldown reduction that we have on our build in order to reset Bone Storm, and that's going to be very easy with Decrepify and Abhorrent Decrepify with the Lucky Hit chance, reducing the cooldowns by 1 second. That's going to be a very easy thing to do. So we're going to have pretty much permanent Bone Storm uptime, and we don't really need to worry too much about it. It's going to work very well. The next thing that we're going to do is talk about, hey, why are we running Ring of Starless Skies over Ring of the Sacrilegious? Well, Ring of Starless Skies literally gives us every single stat that we want. We got Lucky Hit chance. Yes, we want that. We want to proc our resource, which is going to be the up to 5% chance to restore resource. This is how we're going to upkeep our resources. We're going to be launching all these bone spears, and this is going to proc this Lucky Hit chance to give our resource back, as well as we're going to also be running all of the essence on kill nodes. So that's going to give it back. And then critical strike chance. Yeah, we want that. Critical strike damage. Yep, want that. Core damage. Yep, want that. And then just spending my resource just gives me 40% damage. So I just have 40% multiplicative to all of my damage. at all times. It's not even like up some of the time. Yeah, this is literally just the best thing. If you look at Ring of the Sacrilegious, maximum life, don't need it. Corpse skills, don't need it. Lucky chance, yeah, I need it. Maximum essence, yes, that is going to play into the Ossify Key passive, but then everything else is like, nope, I don't need to raise skeletons. I don't need to do a corpse explosion keeps up flesh eater 55% of the time for a 40% multiplier, which means I'm getting like a 22% multiplier over the entirety of the dungeon. Not really all that great. So we're not going to do that. Corpse tendril, nah. Don't need it. So that's why we're going to be running Ring of Starless Skies. Ring of Starless Skies is good. And then obviously we're going to be running Evulsion and our amulet. We're going to have 200% movement speed. We're going to have as attack speed, we're going to be running as much attack speed as possible. You can see we have 100% attack speed here, but we're also going to be running accelerating in our gloves. This is going to put us at 125% attack speed, which is going to allow our mages to attack even faster, to cast even more bone spears. And then for our boots, we're just going for the Skeletal Mage Mastery, as well as the Skeletal Mage Mastery in our pants, just to make sure that our mages can stay alive, because we're not running the Ring of the Sacrilegious. This means that we're actually going to have to manually cast these Skeletal Mages, which is going to be a little rough, and they're going to need to stay alive. So we're going to give them more life in this build than we did for Bombardier, because Bombardier is just automatically casting them. This one, we have to manually do it, so we're making sure that we have that enough life. We are going to be running max resistances, so they will have max resistances because they scale directly 1-to-1 to our stats. And on top of that, we're also going to be running, in our Paragon board, we're going to be giving our minions damage reduction, so that's going to help quite a bit. Now, lastly, the thing I want to talk about is the sword, right? So in every other Bone Spear build that was using pure Bone Spear, we always used Grandfather. I want you to look at Grandfather, and then I want you to look at the new sword that we're going to be using. And this is the problem that I'm talking about in terms of the new weapon tempering affixes and the ability to roll whatever stats you want and masterwork them have literally, what do you want to call that? They've just timed out, like they've just power crept uniques out of the game, and this is an uber unique. And not only is it an uber unique, it was considered one of the most powerful uber uniques, especially for things like Barbarian and for Bone Spear Necros. So we look at Grandfather, and it gives us a lot of frontal damage. It gives us that critical strike damage. It has high base damage. We get maximum life. We get all stats, and it ignores durability loss. But the big thing is that it increases our critical strike damage by 100%. That's pretty good, right? All right, let's look at this new blade. Wow, so Corpse Tendrils just increases our critical strike damage by 100%, and we get 50% critical strike chance, and we increase our bone critical strike damage by 250%, and we have a 70% chance to cast Bone Spear projectiles twice. We get 370 intelligence instead of 100 all stat. We get another 145% critical strike damage, and we get 45% attack speed. This is like an uber. The power that this weapon gives is like double to triple what Grandfather can do. It's not even a competition. So this is why we're going to be obviously running this sword, and it's going to be really good. Last thing that we want to talk about is critical strike chance and critical strike damage, because those are very important things to a Bone Spear build. I want to talk about that real quick. So for critical strike damage, you'll see that we have this 900%, 939.4% critical strike damage. Then we have 75% critical strike damage with bone. This is not accounting tempering. So D4 Planner doesn't count for tempering. So we have 123% here. We have 123% here. We have 123% here. And we have 250% here. That's an extra 600%. That's an extra 600% critical strike damage with bone that's going to be added on top of this. So this is about 1,000%. We're going to add another 600%. We're going to have 1,600% critical strike damage in our build, and then that's going to be multiplied by the Iron Golem. You know how when in season 3, when people had like 12 to 1,300% critical strike damage, you're like, how in the world did they get that? Yeah, you're gonna have like 2,500% critical strike damage now in season 4. So it's gonna hurt. It's gonna do stuff. Last thing is critical strike chance. We only have 21.6% in this build. So how in the world are we actually getting to 100%? Well, Grasping Hands gives us 50%. Bone Storm gives us 20%. So that right there is 70% just by itself. So that puts us at 91.6%. And then we go to our skill tree, and we are going to be running Inspiring Leader. Ta-da, we're at 100%. That's how we get 100% critical strike chance. So the only item we're running critical strike chance in is Ring of Starless Skies, just because it can. And we wouldn't even need to do that. We could actually put in a temper effect that allows us to give bone critical strike chance and wouldn't even need to worry about it. Or we could also just actually have Serration literally just get us there. So you don't even have to run any critical strike chance in a Bone Spear build, and it'll have 100% critical strike chance. That's what season 4 does. So I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like, comment, or subscribe if you enjoyed this. Make sure to come support me in the Twitch when I'm going to be doing that for the season 4 release. Other than that, have yourselves a wonderful day. Talk to you soon. Operator Otter